The arena on Station Meridian was packed with observers from across the galaxy. Representatives from dozens of alien species filled the viewing platforms, their various forms creating a rainbow of colors and shapes against the metallic walls. The air hummed with anticipation and the quiet murmur of conversations in 100 different languages. Commander Velara stood in her preparation chamber, running her clawed hand along the smooth surface of her energy staff. She was tall even for a Crithian, standing nearly 8 feet in height. Her skin had a dark purple hue, and beneath it lay plates of natural armor that made her people nearly invulnerable in close combat. Her golden eyes reflected the light as she smiled to herself. Today's duel would be easy, perhaps too easy. Her second-in-command, Officer Kelnor, entered the chamber with a data tablet. He was shorter than Velara, but equally imposing, his muscles visible beneath his ceremonial armor. "Commander, the human has arrived," Kelnor announced, his voice carrying the rough edge typical of their species. "A human," Velara said, her smile widening, "the galaxy's newest children. Tell me, Kelnor, how many duels have I fought?" 217, Commander. "You have never lost. And today will not be the day I start." Velara picked up her light shield, testing its weight. "What do we know about humans?" Kelnor consulted his tablet. "They are from a planet they call Earth. Small world, average gravity. The species is physically weak compared to most spacefaring races. No natural armor, no enhanced reflexes, no inherent weapons. They have only been exploring space for a few decades." "Primitives," Velara said, shaking her head. "And they dare to challenge us for trade route access? Their arrogance is almost admirable. The Galactic Council required this duel as per protocol," Kelnor reminded her. "But yes, their confidence seems misplaced. The human champion is a soldier named Daywan, military rank of corporal. He stands approximately 6 feet tall and weighs perhaps 200 pounds. Velara laughed, the sound echoing off the chamber walls. "I outweigh him by 300 pounds, all of it muscle and bone plate. This will be over in seconds." "Should I prepare the victory celebration?" Kelnor asked. "Make it grand," Velara said. "When I defeat this human quickly and decisively, it will send a message to all of Earth. The Crithian Empire does not grant favors to the weak." Kelnor bowed and left the chamber. Velara continued her warm-up exercises, stretching her powerful limbs and practicing quick strikes with her staff. She had fought champions from 6 different worlds. She had defeated warriors twice her size and others with speed that blurred the eye. A human would be nothing. In the opposite preparation chamber, Corporal Daywan sat quietly on a bench, his eyes closed. He wore simple combat gear, lighter than what most species would choose. His dark hair was cut short and his face showed no emotion. In his hands he held his own energy staff, not practicing with it, just feeling its balance. His commanding officer, Captain Yunji, stood nearby with her arms crossed. She was a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense expression. "The betting across the station is heavily against you," Yunji said. "Nobody outside Earth thinks you can win." Daywan opened his eyes. "Good, let them underestimate us. This matters, Daywan. If you lose, humanity's expansion into this sector stops here. No trade routes, no diplomatic missions, nothing." "I understand the stakes, Captain." Yunji moved closer, lowering her voice. "You've studied Velara?" "Every fight the archives contain," Daywan replied. "She's strong, fast, and skilled. But she's never fought anyone who truly tested her limits. Every opponent she's faced was either weaker or gave up when they realized they couldn't win quickly. And you won't give up." "No, ma'am. That's not what we do," Yunji smiled slightly. "Show them what a human can do. Show them we belong here." A tone sounded throughout the facility, signaling that the duel would begin in 10 minutes. Daywan stood, rolling his shoulders to loosen them. He picked up his light shield, attaching it to his left forearm. It hummed to life, creating a translucent barrier of energy. "One more thing," Yunji said as Daywan headed toward the door. "Try not to enjoy it too much." Daywan almost smiled. Almost. The arena floor was circular, about 100 feet in diameter. The surface was made of a hard, grippy material that wouldn't cause slips but also wouldn't cushion falls. Energy barriers surrounded the fighting area, protecting the spectators while allowing them a clear view. Velara entered from the east gate to cheers and roars from the Crithian delegation. She raised her staff above her head, acknowledging the crowd. The light caught her armor plates, making them gleam. She looked every bit the champion she was. Day one entered from the west gate to polite applause from the small human delegation and curious silence from everyone else. He walked to his starting position without any showmanship, his expression focused but calm. The arena master, a floating mechanical construct with multiple visual sensors, projected its voice across the space. This duel is sanctioned by the Galactic Council. The rules are simple. The fight continues until one combatant yields, is rendered unconscious, or is judged unable to continue. Lethal force is permitted but not encouraged. The victor's species will have their petition granted. Do both combatants understand? Understood, Velara said loudly. Understood, Day One said quietly. Then take your positions. The two fighters moved to opposite sides of a central line marked on the floor. They faced each other across 30 feet of empty space. Velara looked down at the human, her golden eyes filled with confidence and barely concealed amusement. This small creature was supposed to be her opponent? Day One looked back at her with no expression at all. He simply watched, still and ready. In the viewing platforms, aliens whispered and made last-minute bets. The Crithian delegation was already celebrating. The human delegation sat tense and silent, their hopes riding on one man's shoulders. Combatants ready? The arena master asked. Velara raised her staff into a high guard position, a traditional Crithian stance that displayed both power and readiness. Day One settled into a lower, more compact stance, staff held diagonally across his body, shield forward. Begin. Velara's smile widened as she launched herself forward, her powerful legs propelling her across the arena floor with frightening speed. Her staff came around in a devastating arc, aimed at Day One's head. It was her signature opening move, one that had ended countless duels in the first exchange. The force behind the strike could have shattered stone. Against human bone and flesh, it should have been instantly decisive, but when the strike came, Day One was no longer where Velara expected him to be. He had moved with precise timing, not panicking, not scrambling, just stepping aside with minimal motion. The staff whistled past his head, missing by inches. Velara's smile flickered for just a moment. Then she spun, bringing her staff back in a reverse strike, following up with a combination that had defeated opponents across the galaxy. The real fight had begun. Velara's reverse strike came fast, faster than most eyes could follow. The energy staff hummed through the air with enough force to break ribs. She followed with a low sweep aimed at Day One's legs, then a thrust toward his center mass. It was a combination she had perfected over years, a flowing sequence that left no opening for counterattack. Day One's response was not what she expected. He did not try to block with strength against strength. Instead, he angled his shield to deflect the first strike, stepped over the leg sweep and twisted away from the thrust. His movements were efficient, wasting no energy on dramatic dodges or unnecessary flourishes. The crowd's cheers began to fade into confused murmurs. The fight had not ended in 3 seconds, as everyone predicted. Velara pressed her attack, circling right and launching a series of overhead strikes. Each blow carried the full power of her enhanced muscles and natural leverage. The impacts against Day One's shield created bright flashes of light as energy met energy. The sound echoed through the arena like thunder. Still the human stood. Still he moved. Still he defended. You are quick for a human, Velara said, not even breathing hard. But speed will not save you from strength. Day One said nothing. His eyes tracked every movement, reading her stance and anticipating her attacks. His breathing was controlled, measured. He was not fighting in a rage or panic. He was thinking. Velara decided to end this. She feinted left, then exploded right, using her superior speed to get inside Day One's guard. Her staff came up in a rising strike that should have caught him in the ribs. At the same moment, she swept her leg out to knock him off balance. It was a move that had worked against countless opponents. It failed against Day One. He saw through the feint, reading her body language in the split second before she moved. When her staff came up, his shield was already there, angled to redirect rather than block. When her leg swept, he lifted his foot just high enough to avoid it, maintaining his balance. And then, for the first time, Day One attacked. His counter was not powerful by Crithian standards. It was not fancy, but it was fast, precise, and it landed. The tip of his energy staff struck Velara in the shoulder, right in the gap between two armor plates. Pain shot through her body. Real pain. Not the dull ache of training or the minor discomfort of light contact. Actual, sharp, surprising pain. Velara jumped back, her golden eyes wide with shock. She looked down at her shoulder, then back at the human. How had he found that gap? How had he known exactly where the armor plates separated? You studied my fights, she said. And it was not a question. Every one I could find, Daewon replied, speaking for the first time since the duel began. His voice was calm, almost conversational. You have 12 major gaps in your natural armor. I know where they all are. Velara's shock turned to anger. This was supposed to be easy. This was supposed to be a demonstration of Crithian superiority. Instead, she was being analyzed, studied, treated like a problem to be solved rather than a warrior to be feared. Knowledge will not be enough, she snarled, and attacked again. This time she held nothing back. She used techniques she normally reserved for life or death combat, strikes that could kill if they landed cleanly. Her staff became a blur of motion, attacking from high, low, and every angle in between. She used her size and reach advantage, forcing Daewon to defend constantly, never giving him space to counter. The human gave ground step by step, his shield taking hit after hit. The energy barrier flickered and sparked under the assault. Surely it would fail soon. Surely his arm would tire from the repeated impacts. Surely he would make a mistake, but he did not. 60 seconds passed, then 90, then 2 full minutes. Velara's breathing was becoming slightly labored now. She was not used to fights lasting this long. Crithian combat doctrine was built around overwhelming force applied quickly. Long battles were inefficient. Daewon's breathing had increased as well, but his movements remained controlled. He was still watching, still learning, still adapting to her patterns. You fight like you have never truly struggled, Daewon said, his voice steady despite the exertion. Every opponent you faced was either weaker or quit early. You never had to dig deep, silence? Velara roared, and launched a spinning attack that combined the force of her entire body into a single devastating strike. It should have been unstoppable. It should have ended the fight. But Daewon did something unexpected. He did not try to block it or dodge it. Instead, he stepped forward into the attack, getting inside the arc of the spin before it reached full power. His shoulder collided with Velara's midsection, disrupting her rotation. His staff came up and struck her in the side of the head. The blow was not strong enough to knock her unconscious, but it was solid enough to make her see stars. Velara stumbled, her perfect balance momentarily lost. The crowd gasped. Some of the Crithian delegation actually stood up from their seats in shock. Velara recovered quickly, but something had changed. For the first time in her career, she felt a tremor of doubt. This human had now struck her twice. This human, this small, weak, primitive creature from an unknown world, had found ways past her defenses, ways that species supposedly stronger and faster had failed to find. How? She demanded, settling back into her guard stance. How are you doing this? Humans are good at learning, Daewon said. We watch, we adapt. We find ways. You cannot match my strength, no. You cannot match my speed, no. Then how do you expect to win? Daewon adjusted his grip on his staff, his dark eyes locked on hers. Because I do not need to be stronger or faster. I just need to be smarter and last longer. The arena had gone quiet now. The easy victory everyone predicted had not materialized. The human was still standing, still fighting, and more than that, he was landing hits on a champion who had never been truly challenged before. In the human delegation viewing box, Captain Yoonji allowed herself a small smile. Beside her, the human ambassador wiped sweat from his forehead. Other members of the diplomatic team were gripping their seats, hardly daring to breathe. In the Crithian viewing box, Officer Kelnor had stopped preparing the victory celebration. He was leaning forward, his eyes fixed on the arena floor, beginning to understand that something unusual was happening. On the arena floor, Velara made a decision. She would stop toying with this human. She would stop holding back. She would use every bit of her training, every technique, every advantage her species possessed. Her pride demanded it. Her reputation required it. You have earned my respect, human, she said, settling into a new stance, one that spoke of serious intent. I will no longer treat this as a simple demonstration. I will fight you as I would fight a true opponent. Good, Daewon said. I was hoping you would. They circled each other slowly now, both reassessing, both planning. The easy confidence Velara had felt at the start of the duel was gone, replaced by focus and determination. She would win this fight. She had to win this fight. But for the first time in 217 duels, she was not certain. The energy barriers around the arena hummed. The crowd had gone from excited chatter to tense silence. Every eye was locked on the two figures circling each other on the arena floor. Velara attacked again, but this time with calculation rather than assumption. This time treating her opponent like a true threat. And on the other side of the circle, Daiwan watched and waited. His human endurance barely beginning to be tested, his tactical mind processing every piece of information the fight had given him so far. The duel was far from over. 5 minutes had passed since the duel began. In the history of Velara's career, only 3 fights had lasted this long, and all 3 opponents had been from species known for their defensive capabilities. None had been anything like humans. Velara was beginning to sweat. The purple skin on her forehead glistened under the arena lights. Her breathing had gone from calm to measured, to noticeably labored. This should not be happening. Her physiology was designed for combat. Her muscles could generate explosive power that few species could match. Her reflexes were enhanced by a nervous system that operated faster than most organic beings. Yet the human was still standing, still defending, still countering when opportunities appeared. Worse, Daiwan did not look like he was fading. His breathing was heavy, yes, but steady. His movements had not slowed. If anything, he seemed to be finding a rhythm, settling into the flow of combat as if this were just another training session. Velara launched another combination, this time mixing in grappling attempts with her strikes. If she could get her hands on the human, she could use her strength advantage to end this quickly. She grabbed for his arm, but he slipped away. She tried to sweep him into a hold, but he twisted out. Every grappling technique she attempted, he had a counter for. You trained against Krithian combat styles, Velara said, frustration creeping into her voice. We studied every species we encountered, Daiwan replied. He ducked under a high strike and replied with a quick jab to her ribs. The armor there absorbed most of the impact, but Velara still felt it. We knew we would be smaller, weaker, so we had to be more prepared. Velara roared and increased her aggression. Her staff became a whirlwind of strikes, forcing Daiwan back toward the edge of the arena. The crowd was murmuring loudly now, conversations breaking out in multiple languages. The non-Krithian spectators were beginning to realize they might be witnessing something historic. 10 minutes into the fight, Velara made a mistake. It was small, a slight overextension on a thrust, but Daiwan saw it. His counter caught her in the knee joint, right in another gap in her armor plating. Her leg buckled slightly and she had to hop back to maintain balance. 2 mistakes now. 2 hits she had taken that should never have landed. This was becoming embarrassing. Your species builds tactics around ending fights fast, Daiwan said, and Velara realized he was trying to explain something to her. You have the strength and speed to overwhelm most opponents in the first exchange. But what happens when that does not work? I adapt, Velara snarled, though even as she said it, she wondered if it was true. Do you? Daiwan asked. Or do you just hit harder? He was right, and Velara hated that he was right. Krithian warriors were trained for decisive combat. Long battles were considered wasteful. If an opponent could not be defeated quickly, they were not worth fighting. But this was a duel with rules. She could not simply walk away 15 minutes. Velara's muscles were beginning to burn, not with pain but with the acidic buildup that came from prolonged exertion. Her species' physiology was built for short bursts of intense activity, not marathon fights. She was still strong, still fast, but she could feel the first hints of fatigue creeping in. Daiwan was injured. A strike had caught him in the side, and Velara was certain she had cracked at least one rib. Blood ran from a cut above his eye where her staff had grazed his head. His shield arm had to be aching from the constant impacts, yet he kept fighting. He kept moving. He kept adapting. Let me tell you about humans, Daiwan said, his voice strained but clear. He blocked a strike, countered with a quick jab, then backed away to create distance. We did not evolve with claws or fangs or armor. We did not have venom or great strength. Do you know how we hunted? Velara did not answer, saving her breath, but part of her wanted to know. We chased our prey, Daiwan continued. He was circling now, forcing Velara to turn with him. We followed animals for hours, sometimes days. They were faster than us, but they could not run forever. Eventually they had to stop. We did not. We just kept coming, kept chasing, until they collapsed from exhaustion. You are saying you are persistence hunters, Velara said, the realization dawning on her. You evolved to outlast opponents. Yes. 20 minutes had passed. Valara's attacks were still powerful, but they came more slowly now. She had to choose her moments carefully, conserving energy. Her reflexes were still sharp, but she could feel the difference. The explosive speed she had relied on for her entire career was beginning to fail her. Daewon pressed his advantage, becoming more aggressive. He was still injured, still bleeding, but he moved like someone who had accepted pain as a companion rather than an enemy. His strikes came faster now, targeting the gaps in her armor with increasing accuracy. Valara tried to rally, tried to summon the strength that had carried her through 217 victories. She launched a powerful overhead strike that should have driven Daewon to the ground. He caught it on his shield, and though the impact made him grunt and drop to one knee, he immediately rolled forward and struck her in the stomach. The air rushed from her lungs. Valara stumbled backward, her guard dropping for a moment. Daewon could have pressed the attack, could have tried to end the fight right then. Instead, he backed away, giving her time to recover. Why? Valara gasped. Why did you not strike? Because I do not need to, Daewon said. Time is on my side. The truth of those words hit Valara like a physical blow. She was losing. Not because the human was stronger, not because he was faster, but because her body, designed for short, brutal fights, was giving out. And his body, designed to endure, was still functioning. In the viewing platforms, the mood had completely shifted. The Krithian delegation sat in stunned silence. Other alien species were leaning forward, talking excitedly. Many were recording the fight, knowing they were witnessing something important. Captain Yoon-ji in the human delegation box allowed herself to relax slightly. She had trained Daewon personally. She knew what he could endure. She had pushed him through exercises that would have killed soldiers from most other species, and he had never quit, never stopped, never asked for mercy. That was the human way. That was what the galaxy did not understand yet. 25 minutes. Valara's vision was beginning to blur at the edges. Her muscles were screaming at her to stop, to rest. She had never felt this level of exhaustion in combat. She had sparred for hours in training, but always with breaks. Always with the knowledge that she could stop if needed. Here, there would be no stopping until one of them could not continue. Daewon's left eye was swollen nearly shut. His breathing was ragged. His movements showed the stiffness of multiple injuries. But he kept coming. Like he said, like a persistence hunter who refused to let his prey escape. Valara threw a desperate combination, putting everything she had left into a series of strikes that should have overwhelmed anyone. Daewon weathered them, his defense holding despite the power behind the blows. When Valara's combination ended, she found herself off balance, overextended. Daewon's staff struck her in the shoulder, then the knee, then the ribs. 3 quick strikes, each finding a gap in her armor, each landing with enough force to hurt despite his exhaustion. Valara fell to one knee. The arena erupted in gasps and shouts. A Krithian champion on one knee was almost unheard of. Valara's pride burned with shame, but her body could not deny the reality. She was exhausted. Her muscles would barely respond. She looked up at Daewon, who stood a few feet away, waiting. He was hurt, tired, bloody, but he was standing, and she was not. Yield, Daewon said quietly. There is no shame in it. Valara's training screamed at her to stand, to fight, to never surrender. But a deeper part of her, the part that understood combat on a fundamental level, knew the truth. She could stand. She could continue. But she would lose, and continuing would only make the loss more devastating. For the first time in her life, Commander Valara considered surrender. Valara remained on one knee, her chest heaving as she tried to draw breath into her burning lungs. The arena had gone completely silent. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy watched, waiting to see if a Krithian champion would do the unthinkable and surrender. Daewon stood a few paces away, his staff lowered but ready. Blood dripped from his face onto the arena floor. His left arm hung slightly lower than his right, the shield barely active. But he was standing. That was what mattered. You fought well, Daewon said, his voice hoarse. Better than anyone I have trained against. You have nothing to be ashamed of. Those words, meant as respect, ignited something in Valara. Shame? He thought she should not be ashamed. She was a commander of the Krithian Empire. She was a warrior bred from a line of warriors. Surrender was not in her blood. Her ancestors would curse her name if she yielded to a human, to a species the galaxy had dismissed as weak and primitive. Slowly, Painfully, Velara forced herself to stand. Her legs shook with the effort, but she rose. She raised her staff again, settling into a guard position that was nowhere near as solid as before. "I do not yield," she said, her voice carrying across the silent arena. A Crithian warrior fights until victory or until she cannot fight at all. I can still fight. In the Crithian viewing box, Officer Kelnor stood, his face a mixture of pride and worry. He knew Velara's determination. He also knew that pride could be dangerous. In the human viewing box, Captain Yunji tensed. She knew what was coming. Every warrior had a final technique, a last desperate move saved for when nothing else worked. Velara would use hers now. "You should yield," Daewon said, and there was genuine concern in his voice. "You have proven your courage. No one here would call you a coward." "I will not yield," Velara roared. She began to channel energy through her body in a way she had only done twice before in actual combat. Her skin began to glow with a faint purple light. The armor plates beneath her skin grew hot, radiating warmth into the air around her. You want to see true Crithian power? Then witness the burning sky. The technique was ancient, taught only to the elite warriors of her people. It required channeling all remaining energy, all remaining strength into a single overwhelming attack. It was devastating. It was also incredibly dangerous to the user, as it left them completely drained whether it succeeded or failed. Daewon shifted his stance, recognizing the threat. He had seen references to this technique in the archives, but no footage of it. Velara had never needed to use it in her recorded fights. That she was using it now meant she was truly desperate. The purple glow around Velara intensified. The energy staff in her hands began to hum with a deeper, more menacing tone. The air around her seemed to shimmer with heat. This was not just a physical attack. This was a spiritual commitment, a warrior putting everything they were into a single moment. "Do not do this," Daewon said. "If this fails, you will have nothing left. Then I will make certain it does not fail." Velara launched herself forward. Despite her exhaustion, despite her injuries, the burning sky technique gave her one final burst of speed and power. She moved faster than she had at any point in the duel, her staff glowing with accumulated energy. The strike came from above, a descending blow that would have shattered the arena floor if it missed. Daewon had a split second to make a decision. He could try to dodge, but Velara's speed made that unlikely to succeed. He could try to block with his shield, but the power behind the strike would overwhelm it and probably break his arm. Or he could do something completely unexpected. He stepped forward into the attack. Velara's eyes widened in shock as Daewon moved not away from danger, but toward it. His shield came up at an angle, not to stop the blow but to redirect it slightly. At the same time, he brought his staff around in a strike aimed not at Velara, but at her staff, trying to knock it off course. The collision was explosive. Energy flared in a brilliant purple and white light that temporarily blinded the spectators. The sound was like thunder echoing off the arena walls. The impact created a shockwave that rippled across the arena floor. When the light faded, both fighters were down. Velara lay on her back, her staff several feet away, her body completely still. The purple glow was gone. She had poured everything into that attack, and now she had nothing left. Daewon was on his hands and knees, his shield shattered, his staff cracked. His left arm hung uselessly at his side, clearly broken from the impact. Blood ran from his nose and ears. His breathing was shallow and ragged. The arena master's sensors swept over both fighters, checking vital signs and consciousness levels. Medical teams stood ready at the gates, waiting for the official call. The crowd held its breath. Who would stand? Who would claim victory? Daewon lifted his head. His vision was blurred, his body screaming in pain. Every instinct told him to stay down, to rest, to let the darkness at the edges of his vision take him. But he was human. Humans did not quit. Humans did not surrender to pain or exhaustion. Humans endured. He pushed himself up onto his knees. The effort made him dizzy, made his stomach lurch. He ignored it. Using his good arm and his legs, he forced himself to stand. It took several seconds, each one an eternity of agony. But he did it. Daewon stood, swaying but upright, looking down at Velara's motionless form. The arena master floated closer, its sensors confirming what everyone could see. "Commander Velara is unconscious. Corporal Daewon is standing. The duel is concluded. Victory to humanity!" The human delegation exploded in cheers. Captain Yunji's stern expression finally broke into a genuine smile. The human ambassador pumped his fist in the air. They had done it. Against all odds, against all predictions, humanity had won. The other alien spectators reacted with shock, confusion, and in some cases, fear. They had just watched a species they considered weak defeat, one of the galaxy's premier warrior races. The implications were staggering. Medical teams rushed onto the arena floor. Some went to Velura, checking her condition and preparing to move her. Others went to Daewon, who finally allowed himself to collapse into their care. His legs gave out, but the medical personnel caught him before he hit the ground. Daewon's last conscious thought before the pain medication took effect was simple. They would know now. The galaxy would know that humans belonged here, that they could compete, that they should not be dismissed. One fight had changed everything. In the Krithian viewing box, Officer Kelnor slowly sat back down, his mind racing. He needed to report this. Command needed to know. The Krithian Empire's understanding of humanity required immediate reassessment. As Daewon was carried from the arena on a stretcher, the crowd's noise washed over him like waves. Some cheered, some argued, some simply stared in disbelief. But all of them had learned something today. They had learned that humans were dangerous, not because of strength or speed or natural weapons, but because they refused to quit, because they could endure pain and exhaustion that would stop other species, because evolution had given them a gift that looked like weakness but was actually humanity's greatest strength, the capacity to suffer and keep moving forward anyway. Velura would wake up 30 minutes later in the medical bay, confused and ashamed. But that was a story for later. For now, as the arena slowly emptied and the betting terminals processed thousands of lost wagers, one truth was clear. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. It would not make that mistake again. The medical bay on Station Meridian was quiet, except for the soft hum of advanced healing equipment. Velura lay in a recovery pod designed for Krithian physiology, her body slowly repairing the damage from the duel. She had been unconscious for 30 minutes before the medical systems brought her back to awareness. When her eyes opened, the first thing she saw was the ceiling of the medical bay, white panels with soft lighting, clean, clinical. Not the arena floor where she should have been standing in victory. The memories came back slowly. The duel, the human, the endurance, the final technique that had failed. The shame. "You are awake," said a calm voice in Krithian. A medical officer approached her pod. "How do you feel, Commander?" "Like I failed," Velura said, her voice rough. "Your body is healing well. No permanent damage. You will be released in a few hours." Velura closed her eyes. Physical healing was easy. The damage to her pride would take much longer to repair. The human? Corporal Daewon is in the next bay. His injuries were more severe than yours, actually. Broken arm, 3 cracked ribs, concussion, and various other trauma. But human doctors say he will recover fully in a few weeks. More severe injuries, Velura thought. Yet he had still stood when she could not. The realization made her feel worse, not better. "I need to see him," she said, sitting up despite the medical officer's protest. "Commander, you should rest. I need to see him," Velura repeated, her tone making it clear this was not a request. The medical officer sighed but helped her out of the recovery pod. Velura's legs were unsteady, but she could walk. The shame of that final moment, collapsing while her opponent stood, drove her forward. She needed to understand. She needed to know how a human had defeated her. The medical bay was divided into sections for different species' physiologies. The human section was smaller, as there were not many humans this far from Earth yet. Velura found Daewon in a recovery bed, his left arm in a regeneration cast, monitoring equipment attached to his chest. He was awake, looking at a data pad with his good hand. When he saw Velura approaching, he set the pad aside and tried to sit up straighter. The movement made him wince. "Commander Velura," he said, his voice respectful, "I did not expect you to visit." "I had to understand," Velura said, stopping at the foot of his bed. "You should not have won. By every measure, I was superior, stronger, faster, more experienced. Yet I lost. How?" Daewon considered the question carefully. "May I speak honestly?" "Please." "You fought the way you always have, the way that worked against every other opponent. But I was not every other opponent. I was something you had never truly faced before. A human, Velara said. Yes, but more than that. You faced an opponent who studied you, who understood your strengths, and who prepared specifically to counter them. You faced someone whose entire evolutionary history prepared them for exactly this type of challenge. Velara pulled up a chair and sat down, her golden eyes fixed on Day One. Tell me about humans. The real truth, not what the diplomatic reports say. Day One nodded slowly. We come from a world called Earth. It is not the strongest gravity, not the most dangerous environment, but it is challenging in ways that shaped us. For millions of years we were prey animals, weak, slow, with no natural weapons. How did you survive? We learned to work together. We learned to use tools. We learned to outlast anything that wanted to eat us. If a predator chased us, we did not try to outrun it in a sprint. We just kept moving until it gave up. If prey ran from us, we followed it for hours, for days, until it collapsed from exhaustion. Velara listened, beginning to understand. Your endurance is not just physical. It is psychological. You are built to never give up. Yes, Day One said. When we reached for the stars, we brought that with us. Every obstacle in space we pushed through. Every challenge we adapted to. Other species have advantages we will never have. But we have one advantage they do not expect. You refuse to quit, Velara said. We refuse to quit. There was a long silence. Velara processed this information, comparing it to everything she knew about combat and warfare. The Crithian Empire had built its military doctrine around overwhelming force. Quick strikes. Decisive victories. But what happened when you faced an enemy that could not be overwhelmed? An enemy that would take your best shot and keep coming? I underestimated you, Velara said finally. I smiled when I saw you in the arena. I thought it would be easy. I know. I saw your expression. I was arrogant. I assumed my species' advantages made me superior. I never considered that different evolutionary paths could create different kinds of strength. Day One smiled slightly, though the expression was painful with his injuries. That is what we are hoping the galaxy will learn. We are not trying to prove we are the strongest or the fastest. We are just trying to prove we belong here, that we can contribute, that we should not be dismissed. You proved it, Velara said quietly. You proved it to me and to everyone watching. The recordings of our duel are already spreading across the station's network. By tomorrow, every major world in the galaxy will know that a human defeated a Crithian champion. That was not my goal. I just wanted to win the trade route for my people. You won much more than that. Velara stood, preparing to leave. Then she paused. I am going to file a report with Crithian Command. I am going to recommend that humanity be approached as potential allies, not subjects. Your species would be dangerous enemies. Better to have you as friends. I appreciate that, Day One said. For what it is worth, you are the best opponent I have ever faced. In another situation with different circumstances, the outcome might have been different. Velara considered this, then shook her head. No, I do not think so. You fought smart. I fought with pride. In the long run, intelligence defeats pride every time. She turned to go, then looked back. When you are healed, would you be willing to train with me? I want to understand human combat doctrine. I want to learn from what you know. I would be honored, Day One said. After Velara left, Day One lay back in his bed, exhaustion finally catching up with him. Captain Yunji entered a few minutes later, having been waiting outside to give them privacy. How do you feel? She asked. Like I was hit by a Crithian warrior for 30 minutes, Day One said with a weak smile. You did well, better than well. You showed them what we are capable of. I just did not quit. That is all. That is everything, Yunji said. That is what makes us human. 6 months later, Velara stood in a training facility on a human colony world. She wore modified training gear designed to accommodate her physiology. Across from her, Day One stood ready, his injuries long healed. Around them, a mixed group of human and Crithian soldiers watched. This was the third joint training session, part of a new military exchange program. Velara had kept her word. She had filed her report, and Crithian Command had taken it seriously. Approaches to humanity had changed from dismissive to cautiously respectful. Remember, Velara said to the watching soldiers, demonstrating a technique to the group. Humans will study you. They will learn your patterns. Do not assume your strength is enough. Adapt constantly. Day One added his own lesson. Crithians are incredibly powerful. Do not try to match their strength. Instead, use endurance, tactics, and precision. Find the gaps in their style. The soldiers practiced humans and Crithians sparring together under the guidance of two warriors who had learned to respect each other. It was the beginning of what would become a strong alliance, one built not on similar strengths but on complementary abilities. On other stations across the galaxy, other alien warriors were learning similar lessons. Humans were arriving at diplomatic outposts, trade stations, and military academies. Each time the aliens made assumptions based on humanity's lack of physical advantages, and each time they learned that humans had other strengths. The galaxy was beginning to understand. Humanity was not to be dismissed. They were not prey. They were not weak. They were persistence hunters who had turned their evolutionary disadvantages into tactical advantages. They were a species that refused to quit, refused to surrender, refused to accept defeat. Valara watched Day-Wan instructing a young Crithian soldier on proper footwork. She thought back to that moment in the arena, when she had smiled at the small human who dared to challenge her. She had been so certain of victory, so confident in her superiority. She had been wrong, and being wrong had taught her more than 200 victories ever could have. The arena on Station Meridian was hosting another duel today. A champion from a species called the Vorthak was preparing to face a human challenger. Valara had seen the Vorthak's preliminary footage. He was smiling as he prepared, confident and dismissive. She recognized that smile. She had worn it herself once. The Vorthak would learn, just as she had learned, just as every species in the galaxy would eventually learn. Never underestimate a human. Never assume their weaknesses make them easy to defeat. And never ever think a fight is over until they stop moving, because humans did not stop. They never stopped. That was what made them dangerous. That was what made them worthy of respect. And that was what would make them one of the galaxy's most important species in the years to come. Valara smiled to herself, a different smile than the one she had worn in the arena. This one was not confidence or arrogance.